Welcome to Green Money Matters, the podcast where your financial future meets the planet's well-being, bringing you the latest on climate issues and uncovering new and exciting investment opportunities that make a positive impact.
And I'm Chris Everett, your guide to sustainable investing, ESG funds, and all things green. Each week, we'll explore the intersection of money and sustainability, showing you how investing wisely can create a greener world and grow your money.
From renewable energy projects to eco-friendly startups, we'll dive deep into the companies and funds that are driving change and making a difference. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting your journey, Green Money Matters is here to empower you with knowledge, insights, and actionable tips that'll supercharge your portfolio and make a positive impact on the planet.
Join me as I speak with industry experts, successful investors, and thought leaders who are shaping the future of sustainable finance.
So get ready to invest with a conscience and join the growing movement of individuals who are reshaping the financial landscape. Welcome to Green Money Matters with your host, Chris Everett.
Okay, my name is Jochen Schneider. I'm the director of Enerchange. Enerchange is a PR company sitting in Munich. We are since over 15 years in the geothermal market. We are involved in several projects doing the PR work. We are involved in studies of geological surveys and we support them in presenting their projects. Moreover, we organize events. We have an event here in Munich. This is called the Praxisforum Geothermie Bayern. Another event is the IGC Invest, which is normally in spring. And there were several other events, for example, also a conference in Turkey. Moreover, there are publications we share about deep geothermal energy, and this is more or less our portfolio. What I missed is actually there is a big demand for geothermal energy, for geothermal heat, as it's completely renewable energy. And we can provide information and consulting for the utilities and also for the communities about the possibilities to use geothermal energy. This means also shallow, medium deep, or deep geothermal energy.
Okay, that's fantastic. We'll come on some of those definitions a little later. But tell us how you became part of the geothermal energy industry, and what led you to found Enerchange.
Well, in the end, I'm a geologist, and I was a bit lucky. I don't have to go to Arabia or somewhere else for searching for oil and gas. And I became involved in a local pressure group in Freiburg, which was working in the energy transition. And geothermal was very a new topic here. It was called Geothermal in the Solar Region. This was a project with the local utility, with the Badenova. And we were doing events for this project, publications, a website. And this is in the end how it started. And the pressure group, the association, moved on with other topics, but I stayed with geothermal and picked geothermal out and found it together with a member of the association Enerchange, and we accompanied the geothermal industry from the cradle in Germany. And with the first projects we saw upcoming.
Okay, so when did the geothermal industry really start here in Germany?
Well, it was in 2004. This was located in Landau, and it's just funny. We had some days ago also an event again in Landau. Landau is also the place where the first commercial geothermal plant was inaugurated in 2007. And suddenly there was on an event of the Geothermal Association, there were about 500 people. And normally this was a small group, around 50 to 100 people. And suddenly there were 500 and very interested in geothermal energy. And this was in the end the start of the business. Some projects evolved in Bavaria, also in the vicinity of Munich, and in the Upper Rhine Graben, and just the Bavarian Molas Basin made it. There are more than 20 projects now working, a lot of heat projects, combined projects, and nearly every electricity project becomes to a combined project producing heat for heating grids and also electricity.
You mentioned a lot of these projects are in Bavaria. What is the geographical spread of geothermal energy sources, both in Germany and worldwide?
This is a big question. Well,
where are the biggest and most important sites?
In Germany or worldwide?
Yeah, both.
Both. Okay, we start from Germany. In general, we have to distinguish between low enthalpy geothermal and high enthalpy geothermal. High enthalpy geothermal, we are speaking about temperatures of 150 degrees to above 200 degrees. Mm-hmm. And this is mostly associated to volcanism and on things like this. And we have in Indonesia, for example, or in Iceland, or in Italy, or in Turkey. In the US, in the Western US, we have these nice spots where there is some volcanism, perhaps also in the subsurface, and there is a very high geothermal gradient. This means per kilometer, we are speaking of up to 10 degrees. Per kilometer, we are speaking about, again, per kilometer, we are speaking about up to 100 degrees. And this is different in Germany. We are speaking here in Middle Europe about low enthalpy geothermal. This means you have a normal geothermal gradient around 6. You have a low geothermal gradient around 3 to 4, perhaps up to 6. But this is, yes, exceptional. These high geothermal gradients per 100 meters. And in Germany, there were some interesting spots because there was a lot of water associated. So if you want to calculate the power you get out of the ground, you need 2 parameters. You need, on the one side, you need the temperature. On the other side, you need the quantity of water. And in the Bavarian Molas Basin, we have very high quantities of waters of 100 liters per seconds. And in combination with temperature, water, the density, and the specific heat capacity, you can calculate the energy you can produce. And with this high quantity in Bavaria, also electric projects became viable. And we have these heat projects in the north of Munich, and we have these electric projects in the south of Munich. And here we have the major development in the last year, as it's very interesting for a lot of communities to feed the heating grids, and they're really smiling now. The mayors, they have a smile to the ears because they do not face these energy challenges a lot of others have. They have this energy, and it's already in the heat transition, and the prices are fairly low. And all the stuff what was constructed in Berlin to buffer this gas issue in the last month, it was not necessary for the heating grids fed by geothermal. It just worked, and it's a bit different in the upper Rheingraben. You have not these high quantities of water, but you have again higher temperatures up to 200 degrees. However, it's a different environment. It's an extensional environment. This means two plates are moving away from each other, and this thins the crust, and so you have a bit higher geothermal gradients in the subsurface, higher temperatures, but not very high quantities of water like in the Bavarian Molas Basin.
Interesting. I mean, you know, when a layperson like myself hears about plates moving apart, I mean, are these earthquake or earth tremor type risks of the sort that that fracking industry is accused of?
Well, you have to be careful not to mix up things. In general, it's a natural process that plates move, and the plate movement results in mountain building, in volcanism. It may be, it's also associated, if you look at the San Andreas fault, or if you look at Turkey, it's also related to major earthquakes. However, these earthquakes that we saw in Turkey, or producing the tsunami some years ago, these are much stronger than can be produced in the upper Rheingraben, for example. And we are far away from fracking. Fracking is also a word which is, not mirroring the sense of the word. Fracking means breaking up in the end. And here it's associated with a lot of other processes. The fracking process in the oil and gas industry, they bring down a difficult fluid which is dissolving the rock, because they want to have the small gas particles which are in the rock they want to have. And if you dissolve such a rock, a lot of difficult and dangerous elements also are produced, and you have to get rid of them. This is very shortly this fracking issue. However, in geothermal or for geothermal, there were some projects in Basel, for example, or just lately in Wendenheim, where they put a lot of pressure in the subsurface, were breaking up the ground, and earthquakes happen. This is not our issue. What I'm speaking about with large quantities of water, this is pure hydrothermal geothermal energy. This means you drill in the subsurface and you look for water, and if you find the water, you produce it. And therefore you need minor quantities. I spoke about the Molas Basin. It's 100 liters, and some spaces in the Molas Basin it's up to 170 liters. In the upper Rheingraben, there is it around 60, 70 liters, what is normal and what works in the plants without producing any earthquakes.
So, as far as geothermal energy is concerned, there aren't any sort of really wider environmental risks. People in general can be very comfortable about having a geothermal energy plant in their back garden.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. No. It's it's perhaps a bit noisier having a geothermal plant. However, you're producing local heat. It's really local heat. You can transport it for 10, 15 kilometers, but you cannot transport it for 200 kilometers. It's heat for local communities. And the communities which are in the areas where they have this geothermal energy, they are really lucky. At the moment, we are discussing in Germany the heat planning. Every community has to develop a heat planning. And well, if we are speaking about small communities, 50,000 inhabitants, for example, they have a heat demand of 500 gigawatt hours. There are 1 or 2 geothermal plants which could cope with this. And if you do not have it, if you have to work with this flat geothermal, it's much more difficult. You have to think about taking heat as a source from rivers, any kind of waterway you can extract it from. Extract it from the air is in the end the most stupid things you do, because in the cold period you have to cool very cool air to a much deeper temperature, and it needs a lot of electricity in the end. You need something in the end, a river, but the big amounts you cannot produce with a river. You have to look for geothermal sources in the subsurface.
Okay. Yeah, understood. Now, I mean, geothermal energy is, it's considered a reliable, consistent source of energy, renewable energy. Why is that the case, and how does it compare with other renewables like solar or wind energy?
Well, what is very nice about solar energy, you have these daily fluctuations. The people get up in the morning, they get to the office, they turn off their computer, and here is a high energy demand around 7 to 9 o'clock. Then in the afternoon there was the cooking demand, and these were such climaxes in the past where you had very high energy demand, and this is disappearing with solar energy, because during the period I described, solar energy is there. It's more difficult with wind. Wind you cannot hardly calculate. Sometimes you have very strong wind, very, very short wind. But in combination with geothermal gives you a flat line. It's always there. It always supports you, and you can either use the heat from it, you can use the electricity for it. There are developments also getting some elements from geothermal, and you have a lot of possibilities. Even cooling in the summer is possible with the heat of 80 degrees. You have these adsorption plants which are regenerated again with these 80 degrees from a geothermal plant.
Explain that to me a little bit further. If I understood you right, we can use geothermal energy to help cool.
Yes, you have adsorption plants which are absorbing the heat in the end from a room, and with this heat you put after the adsorption machine worked, you regenerate it, and then it can start from new, absorbing the heat from the room. It's a bit difficult process. Perhaps I'm not the best to explain you such a technical issue, but it's really a very important thing and a challenge, as we have very high electricity demands in summer for cooling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, tell me what your views are around the role of geothermal energy in sustainable development and combating climate change.
Well, I think geothermal is very important for combating the climate change, and you have in different countries different issues. For example, in Italy, there is much warmer. You would not need any heating from geothermal most of the year, or in most of the regions. However, it can produce a lot of electricity there. And also, if you consider other possibilities, I spoke before about taking water from rivers for taking out the water. There is the medium deep geothermal. Medium deep geothermal means you're in depth of around 1,000 or 1,500 meters, and you get temperatures around 60 degrees. And with this 60 degrees, you cannot run a heating grid. You can run very small grids, but not a big heating grid. But if you use a heat pump associated with it, you can push it up to 90 degrees, and then it works again for many purposes.
Explain to me again, or if both you could fill out your explanation around the depths there. You spoke about shallow, medium, deep. Just fill in that or paint a picture for me, Dave. Could you?
Yep. Well, if you start with shallow, you have here different options. You can either use the groundwater, pump the groundwater up. Normally, the groundwater comes from depth of 8 to 15 meters. And this possibly will change also due to climate change. And this groundwater has temperatures of 8 to 10 degrees. Then 10 degrees, and this you can use, extract some of the temperatures and bring it colder down to the surface. Then you have closed loops where you extract the heat up to 100, 150. Normally it's 100 meters what it's used. You can go to 150 meters, and with such a closed loop systems you get temperatures of 12, 15 degrees. It depends where you are. And if you are below the groundwater sections, the groundwater bearing formations, there are also other fluids which are used, for example, in spas. They are a bit hotter. They have perhaps 20, 25 degrees, and all these temperatures you can extract something from and bring it cooler to the subsurface again. And this has no effect on cooling the earth or something like this. At the moment, we have a heat flow from the depth, and this is given away in the end to the atmosphere. And we have a lot of heat production in the subsurface. This is from radioactive decay processes. So by using geothermal energy, this has no effects on cooling. And the deeper you go, the higher the temperatures are getting. And just in the Bavarian morass basin, this is a kind of a lucky state, as there is these vast amounts of water which are associated to some glaciation period, some 20 to 100,000 years ago, where this water was brought to the subsurface.
I mean, are there any environmental knock-ons from, getting access to these ancient water sources?
Here in Germany, and I think also everywhere in Middle Europe, it's very important to bring the water again to the subsurface, so that you in the have a kind of a circle where your water circulates in, and that is renewed. This means heated up again, and is available for the process. So there is no extracting and bringing it to a river. With some waters, for example, in the Upper Rhine-Graben, it would be a natural hazard if you bring it to a river. You have to bring it back, and then it's not a problem. You have to check before you start drilling, are there any animals which can be, or birds or bats, for example, in this area which you might disturb by your drilling process. Your drilling process is normally should be around a quarter of a year. And then you have to rebuild it, and then there is the power plant remaining, or the heat plant remaining. And the heat plant, there you have, it's not a big issue. There is a heat exchanger in the end. On the one side there is the thermal water, on the other side there is the heating grid water, and this is just exchanged, and the thermal water is going then to the subsurface again. And if there is anything not working, you have to do some monitoring. You have to look at the water composition if it's changing. You have to look at corrosion, or if there are any scalings, like in your water cooker at home. Then yes, you have to prevent this, but normally then your system works.
How large are these plants typically?
Smaller than a house for one family.
Oh wow! Okay, very small.
In the end, it depends how much energy you are producing. Yeah. And normally in Germany we are thinking always about these doublets. This also comes from the point of the mayors. The mayors just wanted to have a doublet, and they are content here in Bavaria to feed their community with heat. But if you look, there are other spaces like the bigger cities, like here in Munich. They need a lot of. They just built a plant with 6 wells. And these 6 wells have to be shared in a bigger place. It's just what I described before. The place for the heat exchanger you have and the water handling you have. But for these doublets, normally you need perhaps in the size of a house of 1 or 2 families.
And these 6 plants can service
6 wells.
or provide
6 wells.
6 wells. Beg your pardon. So you mentioned these 6 wells that have just gone down. How much heat provision can they supply?
Well, it was expected that they have 50 megawatt. But it was 60 megawatt in the end, or more than 60 megawatt. And if they work properly, I think it can be even more. And this means in the end, these 60 megawatt they can produce in 1 hour. So and normally such plants work 8,000 hours per year. So this plant, I would expect several gigawatt hours what they can produce.
So help us to understand scale here. So 60 megawatts per hour would provide for a small town, 300 households.
I described before a community with about 50,000 people. They need in the end around 400 or 500 gigawatt hours. And if you have such a plant I described for Munich, I think this, would work more or less for such a small town, about 50,000 inhabitants.
I mean, geothermal energy projects require quite a lot of upfront investment, if I understand correctly. Could you describe what some of those costs are and how those compare to other renewable energy generation?
Just speaking about the cost, the major cost associated is drilling the wells. And here you have also a high risk if you find water, or if you don't find water, or if you don't find enough water. You have a business plan where you calculate related to the region what amount of water you need, what temperature you expect. Then if the temperature is higher, you need less water in the end. And well, the drilling costs are really a big issue, and also the availability of steel for cementing steel pipes in the subsurface, that your borehole remains stable. And in the end, for a doublet described, we are speaking about cost of 40 to 50 million euros. With then your plant is in the end ready. So actually, there is a lot of funding for this because the intention of the German government is to push geothermal in the heat market, and so they created a lot of funding systems. One funding system is the federal funding program for efficient heating grids. So if you have a heating grid or want to build a heating grid, you get a funding of around 40% of your whole system with the energy. And there is a new exploration program which just was innovated at some month ago, and there you get 50% funding, I think, until the first well. This means also the exploration, the upfront exploration, where you look if you have structures, nice structures in the subsurface where water may flow. This is all funded in the end. In some other countries, there you have insurance. In the end, this means this insurance covers your risk of finding the water. If you don't find the water, or if you don't find the expected amount of water, you get refunded from this insurance. There was something similar which existed on a private scale in Germany. However, we had some failures, especially in eastern Bavaria. And since then, there is no insurance, private insurance anymore available.
Okay, so those were insurance. These were private insurance companies, and elsewhere these were effectively public insurers who were effectively covering the risk of not finding appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the public insurance never worked in Germany, and it was once invented, but it did not work for all the people. And in other countries, it's different. In France, for example, or just in Hungary, such a public insurance was invented.
I mean, it's an interesting concept to cover the risks of failure in a business like that.
Yes, you have to consider the utilities, the local utilities, the local communities who really need the heat, who can distribute the heat. It's not a business drilling in the subsurface. They have big challenges building up their know-how to look at the deep surface, to drill there, and they have really the local shareholders, the communities, and they cannot bear the risk anymore. And here we need public-private solutions to develop this. For example, that the private company is developing the projects and is producing the energy and is sharing it with the company who is distributing the energy. What is their normal job?
Are those structures fully in place?
No. These are, in the end, these are new thoughts how it could work. At the moment, there are some communities, as there were in the last years also, which are taking the risk. However, they want to stop at a certain point when it comes to drilling, and some 10 million euros or even more have to be invested. Then you need yes, private partners. Often it's not allowed by some local governments that communities take this high risk and invest so much money. I wanted to mention something before. The cost of geothermal energy are fairly high. I spoke about this 40 to 50 million, and in the end, it seems to be lower to install windmill or to install some solar panels. However, you have to take into account geothermal plants, a doublet is producing, we described it for Munich, there are these 60 megawatt which are in place, divided by 3. You have one doublet around 20 megawatt. And these plants run 8,000 hours. If you now compare it to solar, this is just during the day. So you have sun shining hours of 1,500 hours in comparison. And for wind, it's more or less the same. It's perhaps 2,000 hours of wind where a windmill is working. So you get from yes, you get from one spot where you have a doublet, a very small spot, you get much more energy than in the end from solar panels or from wind. So, and if you would scale up now a solar field for the size of a geothermal plant that you can produce a similar amount of energy, you also would have much higher investments. And you in the end cover the subsurface. The surface, not just the subsurface. You cover the surface with the solar panels.
So, I mean, what are you looking at with geothermal energy? Geothermal energy will, in your view, in your vision, form obviously a base layer of energy and heat production across a community or a country. What sort of level do you envisage geothermal energy, covering? I mean, 20%, 40% of energy or heat production.
We are less than 1% actually regarding Germany. There are other countries which are much higher. If you look at the Philippines, for example, they are fairly good. But even Turkey is far away from having a coverage of 50% of the energy production. In Germany, we are less than 1%, and I think we can reach much more regarding heat. Mm-hmm. Heat is a big option, especially if you look at these different levels. If you take well, I'm speaking about the big heat producers. Shallow geothermal is excluded, is a different story, but medium deep geothermal offers the opportunities for many other communities. For deep geothermal, these are certain spots where it would work. It works in the Upper Rhine-Graben. It would work in northern Germany. It would work in Bavaria, in southern Bavaria. And so this is a kind of a limitation for the technology. There are other technologies developing, for example, that you connect pipes in the subsurface and create a huge heat exchanger. This is one technology which is evolving at the moment. We spoke before about fracking. Is also a technology. However, this is not a proven technology. Just drilling down, finding water, producing it, it's a proven technology. It works worldwide in many spots. So for heat, I could imagine to be 20% or something like this of the energy demand coming from geothermal. However, we have to go small steps and develop more projects. You just asked before when I explained the difference between heat, solar, and wind. What is the hit rate? We had a fairly good hit rate some 5 years ago. It was 90% in the end. Actually, it's a bit different as we also go to different areas and look for new areas. So the hit rate went down. However, I'm sure it will increase again, and it depends also where you are doing it. For example, in Munich and in the vicinity of Munich, you have really a hit rate of 100%. And also in the upper Rhine-Graben, it becomes a bit more difficult. It's a different environment, and the experiences for geothermal are missing in the northern German basin. However, you have a really enormous database in northern Germany, as there were major efforts for oil and gas drilling. And so you have 3D seismic surveys, you have a lot of wells drilled, and you know the subsurface very well. So this you probably can use, this information you can use to develop the energy.
I mean, what are some of the other challenges that we're going to need to overcome to get us from 1% to 20% of our energy or heat requirements here in Germany?
Well, we had a survey among industry last year, and the major challenges for our program, which was invented on November 11 by the federal government, they wanted to produce 100 terawatt hours till 2030. Well, we have a big problem in finding qualified personnel who wants to work in this business. Probably the challenge will be having enough drilling rigs. And in my opinion, what we discussed some minutes ago is to take the communities, to take the small local utilities by the hand and guide them through the process. I don't think they will manage in the end and find a solution, although they have a very nice source in the subsurface. And then there is finding money to finance all this thing, and I think it's fairly attractive going on heat. You have a defined feed-in tariff for electricity. This is €250 per megawatt hour. However, from 10 parts heat, you can create by the transformation in the power plant, you can generate 1 to 1.3 units of electricity. So it's more or less 10 to 1. And if you look now on the prices, you do not have a 10 to 1 pricing. This would mean €25 per megawatt hour. You have a pricing which is significantly above this amount. And for heat, you are not drilling such deep as in Bavaria. There are wells which are up to 5 kilometers deep.
Wow.
To extract the energy.
Wow, 5 kilometers deep. So where is most of the funding coming from at the moment? Is it a mix of sort of public-private partnerships, big utility companies? Is it government? What's the split there?
We did not see so many investors to succeed in geothermal energy. The projects in Bavaria, you have to look at Munich, and possibly it's the same for London or Barcelona or Paris, in the big cities. You have these communities, but around these communities, you have very rich communities, smaller communities, but which are very rich. And they were in the end starting geothermal energy in Germany. bring it in a higher scale. They had the money. Just to mention, for example, Grünwald is one of the richest towns in Germany, and they can afford to build such a geothermal plant. They can take the risk for such a geothermal plant, and they were the starting point. However, we have to go now to the next step. This means how we can support smaller communities and communities in other regions to invest in geothermal. And in my opinion, and this is also what we are observing at the moment, oil and gas industry is coming into the play.
Okay.
They have the subsurface know-how, and in the end, it's their business selling energy or selling a product from the wellhead. And I think this would be the future of these partnerships, taking the risks of drilling the wells, and then selling it to local heating grids, or if there is someone who wants to build a power plant, so why not? He can also buy the heat. It's just a question of pricing.
Can you give me a perspective on, to some extent, the rest of the world? I'd be particularly interested in what you understand to be the geothermal energy industry in the UK and the US as well.
Well, we start with the US because it's the easiest.
Okay.
The US is the biggest geothermal energy producer worldwide.
Okay.
They have about 3 to 4 gigawatt installed capacity. They have enormous resources in the western part, in the area of the Rocky Mountains, down to Texas, in Nevada, everywhere. They have amazing resources. And what is not in their mind is how we do geothermal in Middle Europe. Yeah, it's too small in the end for them. We are speaking about plants which have hundreds of megawatt installed capacity, and this is not possible at the moment in Europe, as it's more crowded here, and you cannot build such plants like you build in the geysers, for example. The other issues, what I also described just a few sentences ago, they are far off. These plans, and far off means nobody is caring about noise and so on. However, as I mentioned before, they do not think in heat. Heat is a European way of thinking. Geothermal heat, because we needed to, what the old Romans did already, we needed to heat our houses. And we use it to heat our houses. And this might be an option for the East Coast, for example. I think there are interesting reservoirs in not with that high temperatures, however, moderate temperatures, which could be interesting for heating houses. And the same if you look, for example, for UK. We have in UK 2 projects which are in Cornwall. These are the Eden project and the other one. Unfortunately, I missed it. However, these projects, they drilled to the granite and they opened fractures in the granite, so-called fracking, what they did. They pressed a lot of water in the subsurface to open these fractures. They succeeded. They found also lithium there. which is needed for battery production. However, there is no power plant running so far as I know. However, we have other areas, for example, the area of Manchester and Liverpool. Here I also would expect that you find in shallower depth reservoirs, which you can use in the end to produce the hot water and feed heating grids. Perhaps you can help me and support me. The heating grids should be there in Great Britain.
I suspect they're not as well developed as they are here. My experience is that Germany and German cities and German communities are much further down the road than the UK.
Yes, but not only speaking about France, we saw a development in Paris since the 1970s. These are small spots where they feed heating grids. In Paris, we have in Strasbourg, in the German-French border, we have towns with heating grids. These heating grids are also developed in France. And if you look in Denmark or in Sweden and so on, Denmark is doing at the moment a fantastic job, and they are using these shallow geothermal wells. They are building up to 10 wells in this area to feed their heating grids.
It's interesting. I wonder to some extent if it's about leapfrog type technology, where those that are sort of further down the field have newer infrastructure in place, can then deploy geothermal heating energy far quicker than some of the more sort of older systems.
Well, it's a problem. However, having a heating grid is better than having no heating grid. Building nowadays a heating grid is a really a high investment comparable to a geothermal plant. It's nearly one to one. And if you have an old heating grid, probably with very high temperatures, because from oil and gas burning, you get much higher temperatures. For example, in Berlin, also heating grids exist. However, they had temperatures of more than 90 degrees, and you have to bring it down now. As geothermal in some areas could not produce these high temperatures, as I mentioned, in the Munich area, in the Upper Rhine-Graben area. But they are there. For example, look at Vienna. Vienna is a very interesting spot. They have huge heating grids, and at the moment they have cooperation between Wien Energie. This is the local utility, and OMV. They are looking at at old oil and gas wells, and trying to find here hot water to feed the heating grid.
So, what's actually required to put such a heating grid in place? I mean, what sort of infrastructure would we be looking at?
You need big demand. So. In the end, geothermal energy is a big city in this energy.
Yeah.
If you look, for example, on small towns, on small rural towns, it's more difficult. You have these one-family houses, and you have long ways where your transport line is going. But if you are looking at big cities where you have high houses, where you have skyscrapers, in the end, you plug in the ground floor your heating grid, and you have a fantastic supply in the end. So when we are looking at geothermal energy, how to share it, we always look where we have a big heat demand. For example, if you look at the Upper Rhine-Graben, there is Karlsruhe having a big heating grid. However, they have a lot of fossil resources from the refinery, from a coal fire plant. If you look at Mannheim, more to the north, they have a demand. They have a heating grid of 2.3 terawatt hours. This is really enormous and very interesting in the end for supplying heat there.
So, what's the ongoing research into geothermal? What are the key areas for focus for future research and development in the field? Where are we heading with it?
Well, hydrothermal, geothermal energy, finding water is state of the art. It works. Interesting become these systems where you drill together, where you have a complete pipe through the subsurface, a huge heat exchanger. This is developing at the moment, this technology. Then I would also say this hot fractured rock is also very interesting. And it would solve a lot of problems if we can realize such projects, because there are rural areas which nearly have no possibility of getting some heat from the surface. And besides heat, we also, in my opinion, we also would have a demand for electricity. And if you have just this combination of geothermal, heat, and electricity, well, it's the most effective energy you can imagine.
Amazing. You spoke about the Eden project and that they found lithium. Is that quite a one-off opportunity, or is that something that's more a more widely available opportunity?
Well, it depends on your local geology.
Right.
For example, the Upper Rhine-Graben, where we discussed before, there are 150 to 200 milligram per liter of lithium contained.
Is that a lot?
This is really a lot, yes. And in the end, if you succeed in a process, and if you succeed in transferring it to battery grade, it's a very interesting option. We are involved here with my company Hydrosion, also in a project in the Upper Rhine-Graben where we test at the moment. And yes, in some years we think something like this could work. In the Eden project, or also in the other project, it's a different story. They drilled directly to the granite, and in the granites, lithium is often contained because granite is a magmatic rock, and on a very late stage of such a magmatic crystallization, the lithium minerals are precipitating, are formed, are crystallizing. So if you know in the end your subsurface, if you have perhaps drill cores, you can evaluate what's the lithium content of the rock, and if it makes sense to drill here for lithium.
Have you encountered, or have you heard of opposition from local communities to this process, or is it all good news?
To which process? To the lithium extraction process?
No,
to geothermal?
To geothermal.
For sure. And in the Upper Rhine-Graben, we have a lot of opposition against geothermal. However, just if you consider the heat production, it's at the moment an enormous chance for the communities to solve their heating problems.
Absolutely. What is their main? What is the main focus of their opposition? The industrialization of it, the access?
These are different points. I tried to bring up some. Well, it's noise in the end. However, this noise you can reduce. It's noise during construction. This is a period of 1 year. It's noise during operation. This perhaps is long term. However, you have to meet with the German regulations and accept motorways. The regulations are quite good for the people. Then one argument I cannot follow up is about the economy of geothermal projects. In the end, we spoke before. Most of the projects is private money. For the future, what is needed, and so the economy is just in the focus of the private communities. However, I mentioned before the communities in Bavaria around Munich, they are very lucky with the geothermal projects. They can offer low heat prices for their people, for their community. They were not affected by the fluctuations of the last year, and it just works for 30-40 years. We have a plant close to Basel which works since 30 years without any problems.
Wow.
So and then which is mainly an issue in the upper Rheingraben, this is the seismicity. But meanwhile, we have systems where we can control the seismicity. We are on the one hand measuring the seismicity itself, but we are also measuring the movement of the ground. And if the movement of the ground increases, we have a kind of a traffic light system. And I mentioned before the event in Landau a few days ago, and they showed that such a traffic light system works. And also from the pressure groups against geothermal, one guy had to confess, well, you had turned down the flow rate. Was it due to this seismicity? Yes, the answer is yes. There is a basic seismicity, but nothing feelable or nothing which can damage anything. And the other fear is that the groundwater is affected, that the groundwater is polluted. However, there are systems where you protect your groundwater from the beginning. You have to bring up several pipes. One outer pipe which is cemented, and then an inner pipe. And then in this inner pipe, in the end, you are working and you are bringing down the further pipes to access the surface in 2, 3, 4 kilometers.
Okay,
so these are in the end the major issues. But regarding climate change, and this is a problem which is not faced or which is not faced enough, the cost of gas burning or oil burning and producing diseases, producing heat, producing excess heat, and producing also pollution by the gases which are going to the atmosphere. This is not taken into account with these fossil fuels. And the advantages of renewable energies are, yes, tremendously high, in my opinion.
Brilliant. Yeah. How can individuals and communities get involved in supporting or promoting the growth of geothermal energy? Are there any initiatives or organizations that people can engage with to learn more and contribute to the sector's development?
Well, in the internet there exists a lot of know-how. Meanwhile, there are for each project there is a new website sharing information. There are information websites in English. Think Geoenergy. There is Tiefe Geothermie in Germany, and a lot of information is shared. There are videos. We have a webinar series every Friday where we face different topics and where some webinars are published, and the information is there. At the moment, also possibilities are discussed how people perhaps can engage financially in projects. In my opinion, what does not work is a kind of a crowdfunding of the first phases of geothermal. So such a public engagement, a financial public engagement, would work from the power production facilities, but not during drilling. Here, the risk for the people is in the end too high, and they can also form pressure groups. And how the people protest against geothermal, they can protest for geothermal. We want geothermal energy, and this is also what we are observing. We had a kind of a town hall meeting a few weeks ago, and there were 200 people expected. There were more than 500 people there, and asking why don't you connect us immediately? We also want to have this energy, and this is a kind of new thinking. What is coming up here? There is no critics anymore at technology. There is the critics that it's not going fast enough.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So you would advise against web funding of speculative developments, and only when plants are up and running. That's the
in later stages. In later stages, this is the time to finance in geothermal. Before there is a risk, and there are experts who can take this risk, It's perhaps also at the beginning some venture capital.
Where do you see the industry growing, or over the next 15 to 25 years? Where will we be?
In 2050, geothermal energy will be one, not the major, but one of the important energy sources. And the industry will be an important industry everywhere in the world, because there are enough untapped resources. If you look, for example, into Africa, where it's developing very, very slowly, and you have really big possibilities. And where I see the biggest growth is in this heat section, because the heat demand will also be in Boston or in New York and so on. And I'm sure there will be possibilities to take it from the ground.
Fascinating. Dr. Jochen Schneider of Enerchange has been with us today, giving us some fascinating insights into the geothermal energy. Jochen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such an insight and such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me here, and looking forward what is bringing the next years for geothermal. The geothermal decade is now.
Yes. So thank you to Dr. Jochen Schneider, who's just given us some amazing insights into the geothermal energy industry and opportunities there. I'd like to mention what I see as some potential investment opportunities for you guys that are listening here. So the sector itself is showing great potential for growth and great investment opportunities. Remember, of course, the investment landscape could change. Always essential to conduct up-to-date research, consult your financial or investment advisor to make really informed investment decisions. However, here are a few potentials. So, you can invest directly through things like geothermal energy companies and those involved in exploration, development, and operation of geothermal power plants. Look for publicly traded companies with a strong presence in the industry. There are geothermal ETFs, which exchange-traded funds, which focus on renewable energy or the clean energy sectors, which will undoubtedly, many of those will include exposure to geothermal energy companies, which will give you a nice diversified portfolio of renewable energy businesses. There are renewable energy funds, so there are investment firms offering specialized funds dedicated to renewable energy projects. Green bonds. Look for those issued by companies or governments to fund renewable energy projects, which include geothermal energy. They're designed to finance environmentally beneficial initiatives. There are clean energy infrastructure funds as well. They focus on clean energy projects, including geothermal power plants as part of their portfolio, and typically seek steady returns from operating assets. There's geothermal project financing. Some companies involved in geothermal energy may offer investment opportunities in specific projects, although those tend to be quite big numbers. There are renewable energy yield companies, REYCs, or yieldcos, which are publicly traded companies that own and operate renewable energy assets, including geothermal. Geothermal equipment manufacturers as well. That's an area to potentially explore. Those that manufacture geothermal energy equipment and technologies and will undoubtedly benefit from increased demand from geothermal energy systems. Remember, investing in the energy sector carries specific risks such as regulatory changes, commodity price fluctuations, and technological advancements. Geothermal energy, being a renewable energy source, is generally considered more sustainable in the long run, but individual projects and companies may still face challenges. Always conduct thorough research, understand the risks, consider your goals and risk tolerance before making any investment decisions. Also be aware that new investment opportunities may emerge as the geothermal energy sector continues to evolve. Let me give you a few examples. So geothermal energy companies, you've got individual companies like Ormat Technologies. It owns, develops, operates geothermal power plants worldwide. Energex Renewable Energy. They're a diversified renewable energy company with a significant portfolio of geothermal assets. Geothermal ETFs, iShares Global Clean Energy ETF. I've mentioned many times before, will undoubtedly have some exposure to geothermal energy sectors. Invesco's Wilder Hill Clean Energy ETF provides similar sort of exposure. You've got renewable energy funds like the BlackRock Global Renewable Power Fund, which focuses on investing in renewable power assets worldwide. Versentia Investors Global Renewable Fund does similar things, including those involved in geothermal energy production. I mentioned green bonds. ENEL Green Bond, an Italian energy company. You've got IFC Green Bonds. The International Finance Corporation, IFC, member of the World Bank Group, issues green bonds to fund projects to support environmental sustainability, such as geothermal energy initiatives. And you've got clean energy infrastructure funds like the Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, CIP, Global Infrastructure Partners, GIP. They've invested in renewable energy assets, including geothermal power plants, and direct geothermal project financing. The Geothermal Development Company, GDC Bonds. GDC is a Kenyan state corporation that develops geothermal energy projects and have issued bonds to finance geothermal projects in Kenya. Always conduct thorough research, review market conditions, consider getting professional financial or investment advice to align your investment decisions with your financial goals and risk tolerance.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to Green Money Matters on your favourite podcast platform and never miss an opportunity to grow your wealth sustainably. Together, let's make money matter for the planet.
And don't forget to leave us a review. We really would love to hear your thoughts or ideas for future episodes. Drop me a line by email at chris@greenmoneymatters.com.
Stay tuned for our next exciting episode, where we'll explore groundbreaking investment opportunities and unveil the secrets of successful, sustainable investors.
Until then, remember, green money matters because investing in our planet's future is the smartest investment choice you can make. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.